Hey guys, today we're checking out some newer all-button options from TIKITAKA. They sent us not one but two of their controllers. We've got a black one from the S series with a split button layout, and then we've got one from the Deluxe series, this colored one here with 16 buttons, and in this video we'll look at both of them and I'll bounce between as we go along. First impressions are positive. Both are good sizes, but definitely a bit lighter than I thought they'd be. They come with a good amount of in-box extras, including red right-angle USB-C cables, some attachable feet, some Allen wrenches, and then a handful of extra buttons with their button caps pre-installed, which is something I haven't seen before. The devices feel pretty similar. They've got those slightly rougher textured nylon caps, which remind me of what Mavericade uses. They are a bit coarser than the usual Sino arcade caps usually featured in similarly priced all-button offerings. Both devices are very similar in terms of dimensions. They are sandwich-style designs, and they share the exact same footprint, aside from the obvious color differences, where they differ is in the layouts. But before we get into that, let's quickly confirm the weight dimensions. They are around 8 inches by 12 inches, so pretty close to a standard piece of paper for some context. They are also pretty thin and clock in less than 2 pounds. When you set them up and seat them next to some other competitors, this is what they look like in comparison. These TIKITAKA devices come standard with double stem nylon keycaps. The buttons and rims stick up a fair amount. That means you are less likely to lose your hand position in a sweaty set, but the slides aren't as reliable as some other models on the market if that's needed for how you play. The switches are KLV1 low-profile chalk switches of the red variety. Red switches are pretty par for the course with the right amount of actuation force required preferred by the most amount of people, and this is what they sound like. There are tons of all-button offerings these days, so it's good for companies to try and stand out and differentiate themselves. I think this is where the layouts come in. Now, the Deluxe model has 16 total buttons. That means a user can remap several extra functions to where they suit them best. It differs from something like a traditional hitbox, but doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel compared to what else we've seen recently. However, the S series controller swings a bit harder into the new and unique. Although they only have 15 buttons, these ones have split layouts, which means that the hands can be placed farther apart. This is extremely handy if you're a bigger person, just have larger hands, or want to be able to more easily use a jump function with each thumb. Very few devices have a spread like this, and even though the difference between the two seems marginal at first, it has a lot more spacious and relaxed feel. They also run on GP2040CE firmware. Newer iterations of this firmware allow for current gen play so long as you use an appropriate dongle like a Mayflash Magic Boots V1.1 or a Hote booter. These devices don't have the required port to insert those, however, so you need to utilize an outside Brook Wingman converter if you wanted to add PS5 compatibility. Not the end of the world, but it would have been nice to have that included. Now, aside from the obvious space, I think another reason for a split layout is to use it for dual jump functions. I think users trained on hitboxes are used to that center jump function, but having a dedicated function for each is more than welcome. Maybe sometimes you want to strike it with your left thumb, other times your right. You can change hotkeys with GP2040CE firmware so you can easily make sure both jump functions are enabled. However, currently CPT tournaments will not allow for duplicate jump functions like this, so that's something to keep in mind if you plan on chasing IRL tournaments across the country. Also, something interesting and slightly different from similar devices is that there are only 2 listed SOCD cleaning modes, neutral and last input priority. If you need to get into your device, they come apart very easily. 8 screws need removed, and then you can pull apart the layers. There are rims on these buttons, which isn't overly common on these all-button devices, and then they utilize these positioning buckles to frame the buttons for a bit more stability. I get my hands on a lot of these devices, and what's fairly novel is the amount of USB-C slots on these things. There is one on 3 of the 4 sides of these devices. That's pretty interesting, and then it allows for a user to find the most opportune port to slot up into. Shoulder to shoulder on player 1 or player 2 sides will matter little if you can plug in a device at basically any angle. This is usually the part of the video where I would change the OLED screen to something fitting, but you'll note that one of our models, the split layout version, actually doesn't come with one. It seems that along with the RGB, this is the trade-off between these units. Still, if you opt for the one with the OLED screen, you can change it as normal with the web configurator. These things are both pretty affordable. TIKITAKA is keeping pace with options from competitors, and these are the controllers priced around that budget threshold. At the end of the day, TIKITAKA has brought something new and novel to the scene, and I think these devices are definitely worth checking out if you find yourself wanting wider devices with a bit more space between the hands. Really, if I had to pick just one, then as much as I love the little OLED screens, I would forego that and land on the split layout version. It offers something a bit different than standard devices, and I'm all for brands setting themselves apart from competition in fun and unique ways. Very fun and spacious. If you'd like to check out TIKITAKA, then they have their wares on Amazon and AliExpress. Prices fluctuate but land around $120 for the split layout and $145 for the deluxe. And then they also have carbon fiber options and replacement keycaps. Thanks to TIKITAKA for the review copies of the controllers, and thanks to you, dear viewer, for watching. I really appreciate it. Support your locals, and I'll see you next time.